Thank you very much. Good evening. Try to be more short than I supposed to be. And so that I speak about Hebrew society both in Moscow and Jerusalem. I think I don't have enough time, so I'll speak only about Moscow. Last Shabbat, we read the Haftarah taken from Eliyahu chapter 1, which ends with the words that have become the motto of Hevrat, המשפט העברי, the Hebrew or Jewish law society, ציון במשפט ייפדה. Zion should be redeemed with justice of law. It is extremely moving for me to stand here and talk about Hevrat המשפט העברי, whose founding conference took place in this very building 100 years ago, on Saturday evening, the 14th day of Tevet, 1918. In the short time at my disposal, I will try to outline the various landmarks of the society since its inception here in Moscow until its end in the 1930s in Jerusalem. I don't think that I have much time to do that, but I try. I will do this based on material published by the society, but mainly on the basis of archival material preserved in various archives in Ivri. The society in Moscow owes its establishment mainly to one person, this one, Eisenstadt, who was motivated by secular Zionist ideology and who later became an enthusiastic communist and supporter of Stalin. He had written a doctoral dissertation at the University of Bern in Switzerland on the procedures of rabbinical courts in Palestine until the completion of the Talmud. In the course of his doctoral studies, he became familiar with the work of the German researcher Joseph Choral, about whom Asaf Nachotsky spoke yesterday. Eisenstadt returned to Russia in 1911, and in 1912 he was appointed lecturer in Jewish law at the Yeshiva of Rav Tzair of Chaim Chernovich in Odessa, and in 1916 he founded the Jewish Hebrew department affiliated with the Romantia State Library in Moscow, and served as its administrator until he emigrated to Palestine in 1925. He was the one who coined the term Mishpat Ivri, Hebrew law, and so this combination of words first appeared in Zachariah Frankel's book, Darkei HaMishnah, published in Leipzig in 1959. But it is clear, however, that in its contemporary sense, that it is fundamentally Zionist term, the copyright to which apparently belongs, the term Mishpat Ivri belongs to Shmuel Eisenstadt, who used it in his first article from 1910, מקורות המשפט העברי. In 1916, in Moscow, Eisenstadt proposed to establish a scientific society for the investigation of Mishpat Ivri. He emphasized the fact that the national rebirth of the Jewish people is not possible without basing it on the first and oldest sources of Israel's existence, which come from a past wrapped in religious mystery. According to Eisenstadt, it is necessary to develop Hebrew law, a Hebrew legal science that will be advanced by the few young people who will leave the old Hebrew Beit Midrash to acquire legal education at universities worldwide. Eisenstadt sought to bring these few together under the aegis of one scientific society. His archive contains various letters showing his efforts to establish the society. חברת המשפט העברי was founded in Moscow here in the last days of 1917 under the leadership of Shmuel Eisenstadt and his loyal partner Paltiel Dickstein, later Dekan. Not many attended its opening conference. We have a fairly detailed description of it, published a few days later in the Hebrew newspaper ha-Am, which appeared in Moscow. As reported in ha-Am, in attendance were the 4 founders of the society and 7 or 8 additional people. Rabbi Yaakov Mazes, the rabbi of Moscow and a graduate of the Faculty of Law of the University of Moscow, delivered the opening speech. He noted the small number of participants in the meeting, but stressed that this should not discourage the members. And he said, we consider it as if tens of thousands of people of Israel are standing with us at this hour. Okay, this is contradiction. The society did not last long. It managed to publish only one issue of its journal, המשפט Ivri, and the scientific work that its members, especially Dickstein, began to conduct was lost entirely. Various letters preserved in Eisenstadt and Dickstein archives attest to the great difficulty of maintaining the society under the revolutionary authorities, which led to the shutting down of its activities in Moscow in 1921. Dickstein tried to revive the society and to set up branches in Kiev and Odessa, but his attempts failed. At one of the last meetings of society in Moscow, a decision was made to transfer its activities to Jerusalem as soon as possible, and the founder undertook to try to emigrate to Palestine themselves. Dickstein did so at the end of 1921, but Eisenstadt was able to arrive only in 1925, and some of the members were never able to leave Russia. I will describe briefly the activities and the goals of the society in Moscow, and just jump about the lecture of Rabbi Mazle, but I think that we can say that the idea of the society in Moscow is only a starting point, as themselves said, for establishing a more significant society in the land of Israel. Is repeated by one of the founders of the society, Yuda Yonovich, who presents the plans of the society to bring the Mishpat Ivri to Eretz Israel and to build a new and great society in Jerusalem. Indeed, the subsequent decision of the Hebrew University not to establish a faculty of law cast great dissatisfaction to the members of the society who immigrated to Palestine. Yonovich notes further that the language of our society is the Hebrew language, the language of our legal sources and the language of our revival. All the books and newspapers of the society are published in this language. Okay, it's very hard to see, but in the meantime, however, until the move to Palestine, the society in Moscow began scientific and organizational activities. First, its leaders began recruiting new members. Already at the opening meeting, the following statement was circulated. The society invites learned expert scholars with European legal education and competent in Mishpat Ivri to devote themselves to the work of the society so that this work becomes their main employment. To this end, they distributed a questionnaire, this one, in Hebrew, among Jewish students who studied law in Russia, asking for details that could help them locate research workers. The questionnaire also indicated the desire to disseminate the teaching of Mishpat Ivri. The details can be found in a booklet published in 1918, which presents the objective of the society, including the establishment of a legal seminar. Its goal was to train talented young Jews in Moscow for scientific work in the field of Mishpat Ivri. The seminar would be managed by the leaders of the society, and participants would include law students as well as yeshiva students with broad knowledge in the Talmud and Poskim. Each student will be required to give a lecture on one of the topics of Jewish law, to be followed by a discussion. Outstanding lecture would be published in the journal המשפט העברי. In addition, general law classes would be held for yeshiva students and lessons in Mishpat Ivri for those with legal education and basic background in Torah studies. Another activity initiated by the society was the establishment of the journal המשפט העברי, which was supposed to appear 4 times a year, but only one volume was published in the summer of 1918. The journal was supposed to contain various sections in addition to articles on issues of Mishpat Ivri, including linguistic section with translations of legal terms into Hebrew, suggestions for new laws, a bibliographic section for publications pertaining to Jewish law and more. The society also established a publishing house, which naturally did not become operational in the end, but we have a list of books that were planned for publication. Among others, the volumes of המשפט העברי, the Foundations of Jewish Law by Asher Gulak, and Dickstein's book on the laws of marriage and divorce, which was published many years later in the state of Israel. The crowning achievement of the research work was a project called המשפט העברי, Gateways to Hebrew Law, which was supposed to be a joint project of the members of the society and of students who participated in the seminar mentioned above. The living spirit behind this project, and apparently the person who contributed most to it, was Paltiel Dickstein. Nothing has survived from this project and nothing has been published, but we can learn about it from the publications of the society and from archival material. Briefly, this was an attempt to assemble all the legal material from the Bible and from the literature of the sages and to organize it according to modern legal classifications. In the first stage, it was decided not to write an introduction and an interpretation for each and every topic and source, but rather to present this in their own words. The main task was to identify the material and catalog it according to topics. From a letter sent by Eisenstadt to Dickstein in the winter of 1919, we learned that the work on the project stopped shortly after it began, and that until that point they succeeded in indexing the entire Bible, Zra'im and Ta'arot from the Mishnah, Masechet Brachot from the Jerusalem Talmud, and Sanhedrin and Makot from Babylonian Talmud. And they made some cards whose number is large and are still waiting to be put in order. There is a great interest in examining the substantive and technical considerations that led to focusing in the first stage only on the period ending with the Babylonian Talmud. And according to Dickstein, these sources until the Talmud are more important than the sources from after the Talmud, from the Middle Ages, and of course from the Achronim. The practical goal of the project, the publication of the volume, a volume of המשפט העברי within 2 or 3 years could not be accomplished in the post-Talmudic material. It was to include it, if the post-Talmudic material was to be included in it. Moreover, the earlier material, according to Dickstein, had a greater substantive value, and therefore it was appropriate to focus on it. Consider this last point. Contrary to the orthodox common view, which places emphasis on the books of the later poskim, first and foremost the Shulchan Aruch, the position of the members of חברת המשפט העברי was that the most important sources for the development of Jewish law were the early sources, the Bible and the works of the sages. The disregard of the post-Talmudic rabbinic literature is obvious in the following passage from Dickstein that said that the Talmudic material is the little that holds the much. Is drowned in the abundance of rabbinical explanation and interpretation, and the scholar ends up shuttering his thoughts on all things rather than focusing on those brilliant nuclei full of interest that exist generally only in the ancient period. It is clear that behind the contempt for post-Talmudic halacha reflected the national, secular, and anti-rabbinic attitude of the founders of the society. According to this approach, the renewal of the national law on the foundation of the past must reference the earlier period in which the Jewish people was healthier rather than the later period in which it lived in exile, where its law ceased to develop as a law of a free people. During the latter period, most of the attention to law was paid within the confines of the Beit Midrash in the form of casuistry regarding the old material rather than creating something new. Shmuel Eisenstadt, in his first article on Mishpat Ivri, in which he outlined the history of the development of Jewish law, devoted only a few lines to the post-Talmudic period on the last page of the article. During this period, according to him, המשפט העברי became ossified and rusty, and its pursuit became a purely religious and scholarly matter. Eisenstadt believed that our task was to redeem Mishpat Ivri and to connect with a distant period in the past when there was still a living law. We must build, he said, an original Hebrew society on the basis of the original Hebrew law. Finally, in the post-Talmudic period, legal practice focused on the field of civil law, whereas public law, including penal law, was completely abandoned, so that in any case, the halachic literature created during this period was a partial value only. It is easy to understand why religious people found these claims extremely strident and reacted to them harshly. The most striking example of a counter-reaction to this approach may be the books of Simcha Asaf. I think that it is no coincidence that the subject and title of his first book from 1922 is Onshin Achei Chatimat Talmud, punishment after the closing of the Talmud, material for the history of Jewish law. Asaf chose precisely punishment, precisely after the closing of the Talmud, at a time when, in the absence of ordination, there was apparently no authority to discuss penal law. Asaf refuted this concept, however. The act is important from the religious point of view, according to which it is not possible to skip to ancient times when applying the halacha, but it is necessary to rely on precedents from periods similar to ours, rather than on precedents from the days of the temple when the Sanhedrin was in operation. The declared secular approach of the Moscow group was also manifest in other points. As noted in Teudotenu, the statement that was published in the beginning of the first and only volume of Mishpat Ivri, the purpose of the society was not purely academic. Its stated goal was to study mainly the law in its national Hebrew form as it has evolved over thousands of years of our people's existence in Israel, in the diaspora, and to assemble the material necessary for continued development and for new creation in our country, the land of our past and our future. It's noted that this research was to use comparative, historical, and other tools derived from the study of general law in Europe, and of course it would not be subject to the traditional method of halachic study. Members of the society clearly stated that their aim was to create a modern legal system, admittedly based mainly on halachic sources from which scholars would choose what deserved to be adopted and absorb it without religious commitment. Moreover, it was clear to all that in many cases the sources of Jewish law did not contain arrangements suitable for the present day. Who would then develop Jewish law and adapt it to the needs of the modern reality? According to the members of the society, the answer was simple. The renewal of Mishpat Ivri would be carried out by legal scholars with a broad background in Torah studies. Rabbis who have been immersed in the halacha over the years were unsuitable for this role because of their religious and conservative views and the lack of understanding of the social and national function of the law. This approach emerged already in articles written in the second decade of the 20th century, and it was at the heart of the society. After the members of Moscow society emigrated to Palestine, they continued to talk about the creative role of researchers and jurists, about reviving Mishpat Ivri and about the inability of the rabbis to do so because of the Torah knowledge and not by virtue of the religious authority. The renewal of Mishpat Ivri, in their opinion, would be carried out by professional committees that derive their authority from the knowledge of their members and from the willingness of the Jewish public in the land of Israel to accept this authority. Naturally, such an approach was not acceptable to many religious people who identified the authority of halachic innovation with authorized halachic sages, and who rejected outright any attempt of the halachic reform that would not be carried out in the traditional way. One of the most important researchers in the society, who later became the first lecturer in Jewish law at the Hebrew University, was able to predict the accepted resistance to the innovative attempts of the society. Now, I want to finish, but I want to claim that the secular ideology of the Moscow group did indeed result in conflicts with the supporters of Mishpat Ivri in Palestine. As noted, the Moscow society did not last long, and its senior members, headed by Eisenstadt and Dickstein, emigrated to Palestine in the 1920s. Here, ostensibly, they could have realized the vision that they held when the society was founded, establishing the headquarters of the society in Jerusalem. But in Palestine, an initiative to establish a society dedicated to the research of Mishpat Ivri was undertaken long before the arrival of the two activities from Moscow, as early as 1918. And in September 1920, the Hevrat המשפט העברי of Eretz Israel, the Jewish Law Society of Palestine, was founded in Jerusalem. It seemed that the impetus for the establishment of the society in Jerusalem was provided by Yehuda Yonovich, who emigrated to Palestine that year. Yonovich was also among the founding members of the Moscow Society, but he was relatively conservative and opposed the secular spirit of the reborn חברת המשפט העברי. Note that the Jerusalem Society was not founded as a branch of or a continuation of the Moscow Society, but was established as an independent body. Okay. I don't have much time, so I just want to stop here, but it just say that if we try to find, what happened in Palestine, I can speak a lot about it, and I wrote about it, but we can see that there were some wars inside the Palestinian Hebrew Law Society between the religious part of the society and the secular law of the secular part of society, and this wars caused the fall of the society in the 30s, and nothing has had remained. I just want to end with Chaim Cohen. Chaim Cohen saw himself as the last member of the secular חברת המשפט העברי. Of course, you know that Chaim Cohen later became the Attorney General and Supreme Court Justice, and he wrote in 1946 this article. Saf mentioned it yesterday, דאגה ליום מחר, concern for tomorrow. And he wrote, the society, the Hebrew Law Society, gave up life among the living, שופכה חיים לכל חי, leaving behind no following. He did not hesitate to express his harsh opinion about the rabbis, who with his opinions did not try to adapt the law to the life of the new yishuv of our country, the Jewish modern settlement in Palestine, and to our time. He concluded his article with a paragraph that is greatly reminiscent of Dickstein's remarks about the role of the international legal conference that he tried to organize and failed. And Chaim Cohen said like that, the question of who is authorized these days to enact such new laws of this type is a separate question. And one fears that when the time comes, opinions will be divided from one end of the spectrum to the other. Possibly the argument will not be so strident if we can submit to all the parties taking part in it a practical proposal on the subject of the debate. A proposal showing that it is possible to design a uniform law that is in some way a continuation of our ancient tradition. and which will be unique to the Jewish people, adapted to its characteristics and its destiny, and nevertheless consistent with the progress and development of the enlightened nations. If we succeed in producing such a legal creature, perhaps there may be a chance that our legislative body will be focused that will be endorsed by most of the community and which will grace us with its legislation. Needless to say that such an attempt to create a broad forum to propose solutions to the many problems that are accepted to arise from the establishment of a modern Jewish state, most of whose citizens are not observant. Solution that will be based on Mishpat Ivri and yet accepted by most members of the Jewish community in the country has never been made